but also her counterpart from Ukraine. He will join us from Kiev, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Andriy Shubiha. But first, before we start the panel, I will invite Minister Țoiu to come and address to the rest of us to see her point of view on what sustainable peace really means. Minister?
Good morning. It is an honor and a privilege for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be able to allow for the patronage of this event together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. This has been on the conversations and plans we have done with Andriy Shubiha, and I'm so grateful that he is able to take the time and the energy to participate today via VTC in the event. He has just arrived in Kiev, and as we all know here across the room, the entire Ukrainian team is heavily involved in the negotiations, and even more so, we are grateful for their time, their energy, and their patronage of this event. Dear Mr. Nitsu, dear Mr. Scutaru, distinguished audience, excellencies, I see in the room so many friends of Ukraine, so many supporters and strong believers in the peace process, and so many friends of Romania, actually. I'm honored to join you today and share a few thoughts on Romania's view towards ensuring a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, conducive to Ukraine's and the region's security and prosperity. Obviously, here in this spectacular room with this distinguished audience, I would like to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the new Strategy Center team. This is actually not the first event we do together. It's a long-standing partnership, and we're grateful for their unparalleled work in bringing us together and facilitating the exchanges of valuable ideas and solutions. Because action is needed, and that is based on dialogue such as the one we are having today. We truly value the partnership and your contribution to foreign and security policy. Therefore, the patronage of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to this conference has been a natural choice. I would also like to greet the fellow panelists that are going to join us today, which will focus on the key topics of peace. Mrs. Stirko, Secretary General Dalmas, we have had a great conversation yesterday on how next year, where Romania is going to have the presidency of the Central European Initiative, we can focus together in this format as well to be able to support the reconstruction of Ukraine, to focus on the return of the kidnapped children, and also be able to take a wider lens and see how this moment in time, through the peace process and then going forward to the reconstruction process, is also a moment where our region altogether creates a modern space, uses this crisis to have a leap into the future in terms of infrastructure, in terms of governance, in terms of modernization, and in terms of especially the connectivity we need in the region to be more enhanced. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember the promise of a Europe free, whole, and at peace. This is not a new promise. This is an old promise, and a promise that we need to protect every day. Peace is our main objective. Romania, Ukraine, the European Union, the United States, friends across the world, we all strive for this objective. It is intrinsic to our policy and our values, and this is shown in the leadership of the international community now, also the US approach with peace through strength, the EU's approach of robust approach for peace and support for Ukraine throughout this process, and also evident in our contribution and initiatives for regional stability and security. Especially, we have focused throughout the last half a year on the Odessa Triangle, which is the format of trilateral work between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. We're going to host in Bucharest in the first trimester of 2026 the next meeting, and we're currently working on the agenda, so we focus on things that are very practical and needed for us. We need to take an approach that is both focused on present needs and also on the long-term future. We also work together in the mine countermeasures in the Black Sea Task Group with Turkey and Bulgaria, and also a strong collaboration with Ukraine. And we need to remind us again that it's not only about the contribution and the support that we give to Ukraine, but it's also every day about the sacrifice, the work, and the results Ukraine has in keeping the region protected as much as it's possible, in keeping the Black Sea safe. For example, this is something that we're doing together, and this is something that has been proved absolutely essential, for example, in allowing for the commercial flows to take place. The most clear example has been the grains, and especially the role of the Constanța harbor, a role we want to protect and increase in the future as well. In the same time, we cannot be naive, especially here in the region, especially here in the eastern flank, and especially if you look at the history of Romania. We know very clearly that when we look at Russia, we need to look at what they're doing, not just at what they're saying. And in that sense, we do not yet see the actions that will make us trust the idea that Vladimir Putin searches or is willing to allow for peace to happen. This being said, though, what we see is that our common strategies, which is to continue the support for the resilience of Ukraine, while also increasing the pressure that we put on Russia to authentically sit at the negotiation table, is working. Case in point, in Romania, what we have done throughout the unprovoked war of aggression is we have been steady and clear in our support towards peace, and that has meant support for Ukraine. And also in the last half a year, we have been more direct, we have been more strict about how we apply pressure. Specifically, we have changed, for example, the consequences of those that want to elude sanctions. We have changed what was in the law just a simple fine, similar to, unfortunately, illegal parking, for example, to something that is more adapted to the reality of the organized networks financed from Russia that were still trying to generate illegal profits that indirectly or directly were financing the war. And now, together with the Ministry of Justice, we have proposed from the government to the Parliament a stricter law that has passed with a large majority, and that also shows that beyond our political heated debate, sometimes there are some objectives where we can fully align. And now the new consequences are jail time from 1 to 5 years, and in very severe cases up to 12 years in jail. And this is especially something that is important as a deterrence, as a discouragement factor in that regard. We have also moved some of the competencies where they have more resources and more know-how to be applied in the court to be able to have the proper response to that. We have just had some meetings in the previous weeks to look at how we make sure that Constanța harbor continues to be protected and continues to be monitored in such a way that the shadow fleet doesn't stop in the Constanța harbor. We have good news here. It hasn't been the case that the shadow fleet used the Constanța harbor, and we will continue to make sure that doesn't happen in the future as well. Now, if we look at Russia's intensified attacks against civilian population and infrastructure, energy infrastructure specifically, as winter is now upon us, we need to, again, be very clear that we see that their objective is not just short-term, but long-term. It's an objective to provoke the entire idea of having a safe region, the entire idea of having a European Union that is expanding. Therefore, what they're doing, what they have done in the last years and the last months to bring utter destruction to Ukraine and Ukrainians doesn't just stop at their objectives there, but it is clearly having an impact across the region. So we will continue to see Russia as what it is, an existential threat, not just to us, but to the whole Euro-Atlantic area, where it pursues also not just the direct unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine, but also hybrid campaigns, especially here on the countries that we are at the eastern flank. So even in the following week in Finland at the summit, it is very important for us to also restate the idea that we need to protect the entire eastern flank, and the Secretary General Marute has mentioned in his visit in Romania, we need to look at it also from the Black Sea to the Nordics. And also, After the visit I've had to Kyiv and Chernouts and the conversations I directly had with the community, and this is something that I think many across the room or that are watching us today have noticed either directly in the community or through the wonderful ambassadors that Ukraine has across the world and the wonderful community, or even in the online conversation space. We're looking at a community that is resilient, that is patriotic, that is very clearly have an aspiration towards peace, but the dignity and respect for their own work and their own country as to search for a dignified and sustainable peace. But it is also a competition between different futures. Russia wants one specific future, and there's a reason why the hybrid campaigns, the malign information interferences are almost always based on negative messages on what we're doing, are almost always based on negative messages about what the European Union is doing, and that is simply because it is almost impossible to base those campaigns on positive messages about the quality of life in Russia, the quality of democracy there, or what they are doing. So they're just focusing on trying to delegitimize or minimize the impact, the power, and the influence others has, simply because they cannot talk about their own models of democracy, economy, or approach around the world. And on the other side, on another potential future for the region and for Ukraine, lies the EU enlargement. And here we need to be very, very clear on the fact that we are supporters of the EU enlargement. We will continue to be supporters of that. The investments we now see from the European Union are also, again, investments not just in the region, but to the European Union's own security. We need to look at the enlargement process as a merit base and very much contingent to the continuation of reforms by the candidates. Romania strongly supports the opening of negotiations on Cluster 1 with Ukraine and Moldova, because there are simply no valid reasons to delay, and further delay is detrimental to the European Union's overall interests. Romania, with its relatively fresh but solid experience of EU accession negotiations, stands ready to share the lessons learned with our neighbors. We will do that directly in bilateral relationships. We will do that through the Central European initiatives, and we are already doing that for some years through the think tanks, civil society, and the experts network. A new strategy center has also had, and I'm sure will continue to have, a strong contribution in that space. We have launched at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also our consultative body with or civil society organization bodies, and this is also one of the topics that we're focusing on for next year. Now, my third point, which is the reconstruction and prosperity of Ukraine. We strongly believe in Ukraine's European integration, and the reconstruction process go hand in hand as complementary and reinforce one another to benefit the whole region. We need not only to build back better, but build a European Ukraine. Ukraine should not only fulfill, recover from the fallout of Russian aggression, but also strengthen the democratic reforms and liberties, confidently advance towards an open, tolerant, and inclusive society. Something that is very important for us from Romania, something that we have spoken about in Chernouts at the Odessa Triangle, is also in the current reforms and in the future reforms to make sure that we support Ukraine on the direction of also ensuring for minority rights in the future. For us, the Romanian language is something very important and something that we're going to continue to focus on together. Now, Romania has some intrinsic assets such as proximity, capacity, and knowledge. Yes, geography matters, but that is not enough. That is why we have taken concrete actions to make sure, for example, that we increase the connectivity. We currently have a master plan for road interconnectivity with new border points that have opened, another one to open soon, including a new bridge nearing completion. A new highway connecting Bucharest with the border of Ukraine is under construction, and currently when we look at the new financing opportunities, such as the SAFE mechanism, which is the European financing mechanism for military procurement, but also dual use and connected infrastructure. This is also a moment where Romania has had the opportunity again to allow for affordable financing to finish large infrastructure projects and continue them at the pace that the Romanians expect. And the highway that connects us to Moldova, Ukraine, is essential in that direction. Transport capacity on the Danube has vastly improved, and again, part of the conversations we're having with Ukraine, but also with the rest of the countries at the Danube, is to make sure not only that we keep the Danube safe, but also that we increase its role in the future and we increase the transportation capacity. When we are talking about security guarantees, for example, and the peace process, security in the area and the Black Sea, we need to have a focus also on the Danube Delta and the Black Sea to make sure we are focused on allowing for that to continue to be safe in the future and have the proper security guarantees. The reconstruction framework has to have a regional perspective in mind, and we also need to factor in the Republic of Moldova, which is something that, again, we address constantly through the Odessa Triangle. Now, to the participation of the private sector. Here, yes, it remains critical for the outcome of the reconstruction process, but I have to use the advice that the President has often given us in many formats, and actually it has been also his campaign keyword, which is to be honest. And here, we need to be honest among ourselves that for some time, in terms of the connection between the public institutions and the private sphere in Bucharest to the topic of the Ukraine reconstruction, it hasn't always been a clear alignment in terms of what do we see as key areas in the future, or how is it that the public institutions are also a support for the private sphere to be able to contribute to the reconstruction. And when I mean contribute, and this is for the larger audience that we might have, I need to clarify that it is not just a paradigm of humanitarian aid, or it's not just a paradigm of support, it is also a paradigm of growing together our economies. Because when we look at what will be the largest construction and development project on our continent in maybe 100 years, we need to understand that that is also something that connects our economy, that connects our private companies, that creates new commercial flows, and therefore creates something that is at the core of our resilience, of Ukraine's resilience, of the region's resilience, which is creating jobs, creating good quality jobs, creating commercial flows, and creating an economy that is strong enough not just to keep us away from malign influence, but also to increase the power, the influence, and the role the region has overall. Because Europe depends now not just on what we now need to improve, which is the European Union single market, but also if you look at the share we have in the global economy, yes, as the US has so clearly pointed out, the share of the European Union in the global economy has decreased in terms of percentage. That has been the case for more mature economies. It is not just our situation. But if we want to keep the pace of growth, that means enlargement, that means increasing the market, that means the growth of the regions, of the neighboring country, and that specifically for the reconstruction of Ukraine and for Romania's role means that we need to look at the present moment, at and the urgent decisions that we need to take, but also take them in such a way that for the next decade, for example, the growth, the role, and the influence of the region is going to contribute to the overall growth, security, safety of the continent, and therefore of the citizens' decision to keep us all on that European future path. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much, Minister. It's a lot of work to do, as you mentioned.